Hello guys, this is Orichikochi again guys. I'm back with another video again. Like, subscribe and leave a comment on the video guys, and I hope you've had an amazing day. I'm coming to give you a reaction between the Kaizer Chiefs and Sekhukhune League game today. Again, I'm a Kuzi for life. They won the game 2-0, so I'm going to give my post-match reaction in terms of what I thought about the game, what I saw from what they did very well, what they didn't do really well. And yeah, guys, just give my honest opinion in terms of what I thought and what I saw, how the game developed. Yeah, guys, Kaizer Chiefs won. They are taking over the wins. They've won the second game of the league. And I would say that it's a reasonably good start to the season. I don't think the game was perfect in essence. And I think there's a lot of flaws in the game for Kaizer Chiefs in terms of how they're playing. But as a team that is still being constructed, I do think that there are some parts that are positives and there are parts that are negative. I do think there's a lot of good parts that they did, especially in the second half, because I think in the first half, it really showed the area that they are going to struggle a lot in unless there's some changes and some tactical and technical changes that need to be made into the team for it to improve. First of all, guys, I do think obviously from the team, the only change that was made was the fact that in the middle field, they played Mtetwa and Mawoe. On the left backs, the defense was quite the same. They also changed Dylan Solomons on the right back side. They changed Monyani for him. In the attack, they took Velebai. They played him as a right wing. Pili started his first game as a left winger. And then they played Igor as a striker. And then behind Igor they played Luke Bartman. So that was the tactical change-up that Kaizer Chiefs did in terms of the game. And from the start of the game, I think you could see that Sekhukhune didn't really come with the mindset of trying to win the game, guys. You could see that Sekhukhune just sat back. They were quite comfortable sitting back in a low block, and they didn't have anything that they really wanted to add into the game besides making sure that they compress space, make sure they sit in the low block, give Chiefs the ball a lot of the times. And it's going back to that thing that I spoke about, guys, in an essence of the fact that teams already have seen from the first few games that Chiefs, if you negate space and you make sure that you compress the space, you make sure that your defensive lines, you are compact and there are not of a lot of spaces. As I said, Kaizer Chiefs is not that type of team that knows how to play through the compressed or the congested zones of the field, especially in the middle part of the field. They are not a team that plays really well because they are very structured. They are very structured in their positioning, as in their positioning style, in the sense that their wingers stay out wide. They never generally come in deep into the half spaces, or they drop, or they leave their position out on the wings to come and play in the middle congested zone so that they can be able to play one-twos and combine and play triangle. They generally keep their width. Also, their fullbacks are also staying out wide. And also the runs that the midfielders, if you looked at the first half, the runs that Mawoe or Mtetwa, especially Mtetwa, was making, they were always trying to make runs on wide. They were always trying to make late runs from out wide. Mtetwa was always trying to make runs from out wide. And also Bartman, you never really saw Bartman, even as a number 10, trying or playing in those congested zones or trying to look for the ball or being arrogant enough to play in the pockets. And that's the thing that Kaizer Chiefs doesn't like to be. It's not a team that occupies the pockets well enough, especially when they have the ball or behind the opposition midfield line. They always want to stay out wide. Their first point of attack is to try and get the ball as wide as quickly as possible. Try to make sure that they play from there. They'll either try to play crosses or they'll either try to play runs in and around that area, within that area, so that they can be able to play crosses or they can play balls inside the box, and then from there on they could be able to create an opportunity. If they can, maybe if the fullback can isolate, they can isolate the fullback 1 versus 1 so that they can be able to play cutbacks from there. But generally, it's not really through well coordinated, intricate play in terms of their passing patterns and their passing schemes and their triangles that they do. They generally like to play out wide and play at pace to make sure that they can occupy the team and keep the ball. And that's why you see that in the first half, guys, they struggled a lot to break down a low block because they don't have clear defined passing automation. There's no automized running schemes. There isn't any coordination in terms of what they are doing, especially when they are playing against a team that you need to have a lot of quality and a lot of coordinated passing patterns to be able to get through. They still don't have that capacity to do that. Yes, the framework of how they build up, because they build up in a 3-5-2, because they'll build up in a 3. They'll have, as you spoke in the previous games, they'll have Miguel as the middle center back, they'll have Kunika playing as the third center back, and then they'll have Frosler as the inverted third center back, or he'll invert. They'll have their full back, which is Dylan Solomons or Monyane. Will always play out wide, will be the person who will be always trying to run in behind, or will keep the width or try to make the run. And then you will have the other winger, which is generally Mvelebayo Mfundo, he will try to play a bit inside. But because Velebai is not comfortable again getting inside and combining in the congested zones, you always also kept it with, on the left hand side, you saw Pili keeping his width as he always does. That's the profile of what he is. He always wants to keep his width because he wants to isolate. He's very skillful. He can play 1 versus 1. But then also the other thing you saw was that Bartman was also coming into that area. But then the tactical thing that you saw that was also a problem was the fact that Maboye and Mteto were playing very close to each other as the two central midfielders. And then if you saw that the only time that either Maboye or Mteto, especially Mteto, was making runs in behind was when then Sekhukhune, because they were jumping from the defensive line to press Chiefs a bit higher in the middle block. That's when you could see that Mteto, because there wasn't a lot of movement in and around him, he would try to make that run. When Kaizer Chiefs, after getting through their first play of passing the ball first from the defense to the midfield, the first line of pass, Mteto would always try to run in behind the defense. So that was what you were seeing a lot from Chiefs. But because Chiefs were always trying to play quick and run in behind, and as I said, they were struggling to get through the mid block of Sekhukhune, and their movement wasn't good enough, and there wasn't a lot of aggressive passing and aggressive movement. It was quite easy for Sekhukhune to shift from right-hand side to left-hand side, because Chiefs were just playing, because it was either Chiefs was playing in front of them or they were playing around them. And if you're not punching through the middle, it's very difficult for you able to hurt a team. That's why I say it's very important that you punch through the middle, play the balls in the middle field. Make sure that you confront the defensive line of the opposition. Make sure you confront the offensive line of the opposition. It's either you turn them to make them look at their defense, or you either turn your middle. You either make sure that the defense of the opposition team is coming up into the middle field through movement because they are scared of what you're doing in behind, or you're turning them, making sure that they run towards their goal. And that's the thing that Kaizer Chiefs were not doing, because everything that they were doing was in front of Sekhukhune. So it was very easy for Sekhukhune to shift left to right. It was easy for Sekhukhune to shift up, because also even when they did make runs in behind Chiefs, they weren't good enough. So it made it quite easy for Sekhukhune to defend them. And because of the quality or lack of quality of their passing, and lack of quality in terms of their movement, lack of also their passing patterns, and also not having coordinating passing schemes, it was very easy for Sekhukhune to be able to defend them. And that's where Kaizer Chiefs are going to struggle a lot in the games, because a lot of the teams that they're going to play against are going to give them the picture that Sekhukhune gave. It's just that Sekhukhune, one thing that they didn't do well in the second half was the fact that they left the defensive line. They were not organized. Their midfield became very lax. The midfielders and the wingers, which was something they were doing very well, they didn't compress the space. They didn't make sure that they defended as a team. And the other thing that they did is that they lost the ball, because they were trying to be a bit more positive in the second half. They lost the ball, and they played a game that Kaizer Chiefs is playing against, which is transition football. If you notice that the goals that Kaizer Chiefs play, and this is something that I said, is that Kaizer Chiefs are a very dangerous team on turnover football. The moment they get turnovers, because they have very nippy players, they have quick players that play in space. When they play on space and they're making runs when there's a lot of space, they make a lot of good movement when there's a lot of space around them. And that's what you saw. When they are playing against a team that is very defensive minded and does not give them space, it's very difficult for teams to play through them. But when they play against a team that they can be able to play after 2 or 3 passes and they get to their box, that's very easy for Chiefs to do. And that's where when I'm moving into the second half, where they were able to score the goals that they scored, because they got the ball. Sekhukhune lost the ball. Kaizer Chiefs all of a sudden, Solomon, which is something that he always does, has a lot of pace, running behind. Pile was on the right hand side, played the ball into the half space between the left back and the defender of Sekhukhune. He cut it back into Bartman, and there were a lot of line players getting to the box. Then Bartman did a very composed finish. But that was something that was on turnover football. And that is something that Kaizer Chiefs is their biggest strength. When you give them space and you give them a lot of space to run into, that is where they look at their best. And that's where the goal came in. And then, because even in the second half, guys, there was a lot of times where Kaizer Chiefs was losing balls, and this is something that I say is that after 4 or 5 passes, especially when they're getting towards the opposition final third, they were still losing a lot of balls. But because also Sekhukhune were not disciplined enough to keep their line and to make sure that the players were communicating and pressing together, pushing up together, sitting, coming back together, it made it much easier for Kaizer Chiefs to be able to play those balls in behind, which they were able to play. The second goal, again, from Dudusi Shabalala, the same thing. They pressed the defender was disguised. He took the disguise and he went up with Ndudusi Shabalala. But there wasn't any pressure on Ndlovu. You cannot press as a defensive line. You can only press up when your midfield and your attacking players are pressing up. You cannot do or keep an offside trap when a player is in front of you and the player that has the ball is not given pressure on. That is a recipe for disaster, and that's where Sekhukhune was able to concede the second goal. Good disguise from Shabalala to come into out, show the defender specific picture, and then he runs in behind, which was a very good goal. But I just think that was poor defending from Sekhukhune. They didn't hold their line. The defender got sucked into by Shabalala, and he left the space in behind. If there's no pressure on the ball, sit back, sweep, But because he didn't keep the space and he moved and when there wasn't any pressure, Shabalala was able to run in behind and score. So when I was looking at the game and I was analyzing it, it was showing me the thing that, yes, Kaizer Chiefs did really play well, but there's a lot of work to be done on aspects of play. They are still very clunky. These players are still not... I think it's also... That's why I don't want to be too harsh on Chiefs, because their players are still learning to play with each other again. Luke Barkban, you can call Luke Barkban more like a new player because he's starting to play games. The same thing as Philly, that's his second start. That's his first start. He played a half in the game they played against Golden Arrows. The same thing with Velepai. It's probably his first start of the season also. Besides the game that he played against, the first game of the season where he also didn't play, he played a bit. But a lot of these players are still getting into the season. They're still getting themselves used to the play. But I do think that one thing that I would say is that the players, I can see that Fernando de Cruz is trying to build a structure to the team. He wants to build a good structure first. And then he will I think from there be able to give the players a bit of tactical flexibility to move in and around. But it's going to take time because, as I said, guys, is the tactical acumen and the tactical principle of what Fernando Cruz is trying to implement. Because Kaizer Chiefs have a lot of young players and have a lot of players that are not experienced enough at the high level. And there's a lot of pressure. The Pilis, as I spoke about, the Bartman, the Velepai, Igodora didn't play a lot of games last season. There's Kaizer Ibrahim who's going to come. There's Mfuno, there's Mduduzi Shabalala. To build a team, be able to play, to build a good cohesive tactical principle, a good cohesive passing, good cohesive tactical principles. It's going to take time because these players are young and they're still learning about what they have to do. But I do think that one thing that I would say is the fact that the middle field was functioned a lot better. I have to give a lot of props to Mtetwa. That was one thing that I think Mtetwa brought in, and also Sandile Ndlovu brought. They brought that aggressiveness. They were able to win the ball back for Chiefs quite quickly, and they were able to cover a lot of ground. And that's the thing that you need. You need your midfielders to be able to cover a lot of ground and put pressure on the ball. And that's what Mtetwa and Ndlovu did. I think Maboye was a bit tired. You could see that his energy was a bit off. You could also see that I don't think Bartman also had his best game. I think he drifted in and out of the game. The same thing as Velepai, drifted in and out of the game. But I think for him to score the goal is going to give him a lot of confidence. Because I think one thing Kaizer Chiefs is still lacking, they still need that number 10 that is going to be, you need that arrogant number 10. They still need, I do think that Mtetwa can show very good moments, but the opposition number 8 and the number 10 that the Kaizer Chiefs need, that's why I said they still need a number 10 who has a lot of quality on the ball, a player who has the arrogance, a profile. That's why I gave you a profile of like a Nuno Santos who wants the ball, who wants the ball behind the opposition defensive line, who can be able to play those passes, who can be able to make the team play. And I also think they need a number 8 who can do that for them also. You know, I don't think I think you can play Mtetwa and Ndlovu together when you're playing against teams that you want. I think in the bigger games, that's the type of setup you could use. We could also play in a 4-3-3 and play Ndlovu and Maboye, I think, as 2 8s. Because I do think that number 10 presence in the Chiefs is still something that they are struggling. They do not have that type of player. I do think Dodusi Shabalala has good qualities in him, but I don't think he has a profile of a number 10. I look at him more as a winger because, like Bartman, like him, you know, you need to have a player who can make the team tick. You know, and I don't think he still has that capacity to make the team play. I still think he's learning about knowing how to play in the pockets. When it's the right time to play in the pockets, when it's the right time to call, when it's the right time to play 1-2s, when it's the right time to play in behind, when it's the right time to shoot. Those are things that you need to think about as a number 10, and they have to come naturally towards you. That's why when you look at a player like Marcelo Allende from Sundown, you can see that he understands the role of being a player that can make the team dictate. And Kaizer Chiefs still does not have that type of player. I do think Bartman is more of a striker or a second striker. I do think Chislett is a number 10, but it doesn't show for the ball well enough for me. Ngobo drifts in and out of games. It doesn't stamp his authority on the game well enough. I do think Mduduzi, out of all the players that I said, I do think that he has the highest ceiling to do that, but I do think that he needs a lot of coaching and he needs to be developed properly to play in that role, to understand, you know, because those players, the players that Kaizer Chiefs need, they still need a lot of development. They are still raw. Velebai is still raw. Fundo Vilakazi is still raw. Mdudu Shabalala is still very raw. Pili is still very raw, even though I think his ceiling is a lot higher too. Is higher than the other players in terms of his quality and his technical ability. But I do think that the number 10 and generally a number 8 of a similar type who can make team play is something that Kaizer Chiefs are still lacking. I do think that a right winger that I would have liked, which is Tapelo Maseko, is off the market. Looks like he's going to Denmark with FC Copenhagen. But I do think Kaizer Chiefs still need, even if they are not able to get a winger, I do think that if they could get a number 10 and another number 8 who can make the team play. I'm a bit surprised that Fernando looked away from Thabo Cele, because I think Thabo Cele has those qualities to make the team play and make the team tick. Because I think in the type of game that Kaizer Chiefs played today is what type of game that Cele would be able to play would suit very well, because it would make the team play. Because I still think Kaizer Chiefs need to learn to play against teams that sit back a lot. They still need a lot of coaching, a lot of work on the pitch in terms of being able to play against those type of teams, because that's what they're gonna face also in the Confederation Cup against teams there. Those teams are gonna be of a higher quality, and when you're playing against higher quality teams, they're gonna defend a lot better, but also when they do have the ball, they're gonna hurt you. So I do think that's one aspect of the game that they still need to work on quite a lot. I'm very happy with the win, especially after what happened in the weekend when they played against Golden Arrows. They needed a spark. And I think for the game that they're going to play against Mamelodi Sundowns, this is what they needed to get over. So congratulations to Kaizer Chiefs for winning the game. There's still a lot of work to be done. I do think Chiefs need to really add a bit more quality. They still need two quality players to add, especially into the number 10 and number 8 role for me, so that they could be able to make the team play a lot better, dictate a lot better, combine a lot better. But I think it will come with time. These players, as I said, that there are going to be a lot of games where there are going to be a lot of up and down games, because Kaizer Chiefs still doesn't have a game model that you can look at and say what type of team are Chiefs. They still don't have a goal model or a philosophy that you can be able to identify and have a clear vision of what they are. They're still developing that, but you also need to add quality to that so that it can process a lot faster. Because if you're winning games and you're getting better, that's the best thing that you can do, is to win games whilst you're also improving as a team. And I think that's the biggest thing that Chiefs is that Kaizer Chiefs don't need to stand still. They need to add quality. They need to be a lot better. And especially in the final third, they have to have more conviction. There's to be better movement. There's to be more conviction, more aggressiveness, better passing, and better cohesion in terms of what they're doing, and conviction. A team that has a lot of cohesion and conviction is a team that's dangerous. They know what they're doing when they get to the final third. I do still that Kaizer Chiefs players still doesn't have that spark or that combinations that they need. But the more they work on it, the more it will come with time. But for today, I think they deserve it's a game well done. So guys, that's what I just wanted to give. I just wanted to give my post-match reaction to that. More is going to come. I'm going to also give my preview on the game that they're going to play against Mamelodi Sundowns. But for Kaizer Chiefs, this is a good start. And yeah, more is to come. But yeah, guys, my man of the match for me was Tetwa. I think was the best player on the pitch. I think his covering of the ground and his ball winning was very good. He has a lot of energy, and you need that type of player. Yes, his quality, in terms of his quality, especially in the final third, to make passes might not be there. But I do think sometimes you need that player who's a ball winner, who can be able to win the ball back for you. And I think that Mtetwa can give them that, which is an important aspect. In the game he came in now, he did that very well. In the first game that he played against, in the first game of the season in the league, he came in also in the second half, he gave that impact. So I think he's pushing the slot to be the defensive midfielder or the sitting midfielder, even though you know that he's a CAM. But I think for that role, with the player next to him, I think he's really pushing Fernando de Cruz to be a consistent starter now. But yeah, I think he's my man of the match. And yeah, I think it's congratulations to Chiefs again. More is to come, guys. Again, guys, like, subscribe. Until I see you next time, guys. Sharp, bye-bye.